We had just finished praying when we heard someone knock on the window. We all turned around in fear. Not because we were in a church at that hour of the night, but since no one could possibly be knocking on the door. On that window, on the second floor, Good evening, everyone. I'm really glad to welcome you back here, in this space where you can trust, to escape everything, even briefly, while you listen to horror stories, tales of ghosts, and encounters with the paranormal. If you listen to us on the subway, heading home, on public transit, or in traffic, I hope my company makes your trip feel shorter. If we're your background sound while you work or do tasks at home, or trying to sleep, also, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be with you. It's a privilege that you let us be part of your daily life. Without further ado, it's time to turn off the lights and let yourself be carried away by the stories that follow. Don't mistake this intro's kindness. No, real terror awaits you in the following stories. You are listening to Stories of the Night. I remember much about when my brother and I were young. He was 2 years older than me, but tall for his age, very tall. I was always sick and weak, so as kids it felt like there was a 5-year age gap between us. My parents left us alone because they both went to work. Back then, they tried to start a business and were gone from dawn till dusk. They dropped us off at school at 7, and they wouldn't come home until after 10 at night. At school, my brother would wait for me outside my classroom every day. Oddly, I never saw him during recess at school, but he was always waiting at the door when I came out. Not sure how he got out before me and waited for me, but he was always there. But I liked that. I knew I could trust him. I always trusted him. We were walking home with his friends. It wasn't the safest neighborhood, but since we stuck together, no one bothered us. Nobody bothered us. The only time a guy from a vacant lot asked us for money in a slightly violent way. He took a beating from those 5th, 6th grade kids, the toughest in the school. That was the first time I saw my brother fight. Fight, like really fight, as if his life depended on it. It wouldn't be the last time. And I want to say that he was a brave person. That's why what I'm going to tell happened the way it happened. We were at home since it was around 8. At that time, Mrs. Ophelia, a close friend of my mom, often brought us dinner. But on that occasion, we just got a call. He told us he'd be late and said we should eat something while waiting, that he would be there as soon as he could. My brother began searching for something, but there was nothing. Those were hard times with the fridge nearly always empty, when everything went to the family business. Doña Ophelia never charged my parents for watching us or giving us dinner every day. She did it because she cared about us. That's why there was no way we could complain that she couldn't do us that favor that night. But there was nothing. We were starving with nothing to eat. I watched from the living room as my brother searched the top of the pantry, standing on a chair tiptoed to see if there was something hidden up there. The door between the living room and kitchen burst open, and we saw a woman running in right in the middle of us, into our house, crying, and she went straight into my parents' room. I didn't know what to do. I just stood up, and my brother jumped off the chair where he was standing, checked from the hallway between the living room and kitchen, toward the room. Then he glanced out at the street. He saw something that made him squint, as if he had been frightened, and he ran to close and lock the door. I froze in fear, and he grabbed me and pulled me into our room. When we entered the room, we heard someone kicking the door. It was really scary. It seemed like he was going to break it down, like he was going to smash it.
Come over here! Don't try to hide!
On the other side of the wall, we could hear the woman crying, very scared, hiding in my parents' room. And suddenly it was clear the door was broken down, that whoever was there, who was following her, had already entered. I started to cry. My brother pushed me into the closet, sat me in the back, and covered me with things to hide me. He gave me a belt to lock it from inside by jamming the 2 doorknobs. He told me to wrap it around them and pull hard if I heard someone enter. I asked him what he was going to do. I asked him to hide with me. Please don't go out or try to stop that man. He was brave, but what we were hearing out there was an adult man, completely furious. He told me to calm down, that he would go out the window and run to get Mrs. Ophelia's husband and the neighbors. He asked me to close it, and I must not open it before he returned. I heard him open the window. I heard him jump outside and cry out in pain when he landed. I heard him run, and then the crying in my parents' room suddenly stopped. In an instant. Also, the voices of the man who appeared to enter the house and destroy everything, tossing everything aside until he reached the room. He suddenly fell in an instant. The door to the room opened slowly. Someone neared the closet door. They knocked, but I stayed quiet. I held my breath so no one would know I was there. It's me. Open up. I heard my brother's voice, but he had just left. He had said he would run to Mrs. Ophelia's house, and that was on the street behind. He couldn't be there. He tried to open it, and I gripped the belt, squeezing as hard as I could. I promise you it's me. Open up. I want to show you something. I don't know why, but I couldn't take it anymore. She was about to open the door, even though I was trying to stop her, so I just gave up. I took the belt off the doorknobs. I opened it slowly. I told you it's me, dummy. Come here. Come here, let's see. He was my smiling brother, but with a different smile, a nervous one. I went out with him. He showed me the hallway. Everything was in order. The front door was perfect. Then we went to see my parents' room, and there was no one. No evidence anyone had been there. It was as if the lady and whatever was following her had vanished. No one came in. No one told me. I told him that wasn't true, that both of us had seen him come in. That wasn't a ghost. We saw a lady come in, running and screaming. A real lady. We heard her hide in my parents' room. The lady left the front door open. My brother closed it afterward. I know. But no one came in. My brother replied, sadness. Rephrase the text. Shorten the sentence by up to 31%. Preserve the original speaker's perspective. Retain all names, locations, and events. Ensure grammatical correctness. I asked him, what did you see outside? When he quickly closed and locked it. He shook his head and said no, as if he saw nothing, as if he didn't want to say it. When Mrs. Ophelia arrived with dinner a few minutes later, I first told her what happened. She looked at me somewhat puzzled, turning to look at my brother as if to have him confirm that what I was saying was true. She told my mom. The two of them started praying from then on, every night in my parents' room, for 9 days. Nothing unusual happened in that house again. I can't ask my parents about this story anymore. My brother isn't either. I never found out what it was that he saw. I couldn't ask if they knew. Something else happened in that house, or what it was that I saw. I still think that maybe it was a moment stuck in time, frozen, repeating itself. Maybe from before. Maybe from something yet to happen. I hope it's the first one. Before we continue, I want to remind those listening to us on YouTube that you still have time to leave us a comment on the previous episode, the one from last Monday, to win one of the 5 books we're going to give away next Sunday, which we'll announce in the next episode. In the meantime, we continue. Hello, Night Stories community. I'm Ulysses Ojeda from Hermosillo, Sonora, northern Mexico. For a long time, I've wanted to share this story, but I've only told it to 4 people. My best friends? I'm afraid they'll think I'm crazy, that I'm making it up. To protect privacy, I'll change the names of those involved, and I start writing before I change my mind again. This happened 6 years ago. I was 17 and attending the church youth group then. I had already been there for a while. They had invited me to join the coordination team. We were about 10 guys, all about the same age. Meetings were held Friday nights. We met in a room that was on the 2nd floor of a building next to the church. To get in, you had to go through a very heavy metal door that was on the side of this building. Then we crossed 2 rooms. One had an old piano, and the other had an electric organ. You had to enter through a heavy metal door, like all the doors there. Then we would cross 2 rooms, one with an old piano and the other with an electric organ. That 2nd room led to a larger one, with a small stage and a red door on one side. You'd go up some stairs there to reach the room where we met. If you went up, there was a hallway with more rooms for catechism classes. It was massive, like a maze. The meeting room had 2 windows, one that faced the warehouse, and the other to a catechism classroom. I'm explaining all this so you can picture it better, because those details will matter later. That night, all 10 group members were present. Only Victor, the adult coordinator, was missing. Since we got out of school late, meetings were usually at 8. As we waited for Victor, we chatted to pass the time. He arrived about 10 minutes late. We set up a folding table and began the meeting. Everything stayed normal for the next 2 hours. It was nearly 11 as usual. Victor offered to give everyone a ride to take us all home. But that's when someone knocked on the window that faced the storeroom, like they wanted us to open it. A window where no one could stand due to the storeroom's high ceiling. The window was on the 2nd floor. We all turned around, but no one said anything. No one dared, even though it was an almost imperceptible touch. It had indeed happened. Victor calmly said, "We need to hurry. They're already asking us to leave." We continued the meeting, though we were all left wondering. And just when we were about to finish, they knocked again. But this time it was louder, more insistent. Victor got up from the chair and said, "Okay, let's go already. But please, hold hands. Let's say a prayer before we leave." We all stand together. We were used to closing our eyes when we prayed, but that time, right before we began, Victor said something different. I'm going to ask you something, guys. Close your eyes. Don't open them until I say so. We looked at each other. No one spoke, but it was obvious everyone was thinking the same thing. Something very, very strange was happening. We crossed ourselves and prayed. Victor had barely started saying the first words when I clearly heard the door to the living room open. A heavy door that creaked horribly when it moved. That sound was unmistakable. Daniela on my left and Miguel on my right squeezed my hands tightly. Then I realized I wasn't the only one who heard it, that I wasn't imagining or just influenced by suggestion. A moment later, the door slammed shut so forcefully it made me jump, and then Victor raised his voice and said louder, "Don't open your eyes until I tell you to, please." This time his tone changed. It wasn't part of the prayer, but sounded like a serious scolding. He kept praying, but I couldn't think anymore and squeezed my eyes shut. The atmosphere changed. It felt strange in a way I had never felt there before. Especially there, it was as if something was in the room with us. I don't know, it was a horrible tension. I started to hear footsteps, soft footsteps in the room with us, but distinct like someone wearing heels. Click, 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 one after another, surrounding us. They were walking slowly, as if they wanted to make sure we all heard them. The footsteps moved around us. I could feel them getting closer to each of us. It was as if someone was walking right behind me, behind us. I paid attention to hear something, a laugh, as if someone was watching us from somewhere, as if they were laughing at us, not at a joke, not at something funny. They were laughing at us like we were fools. Daniela and Miguel squeezed my hands so hard I couldn't feel my fingers and sensed them trembling. And then I felt something else. Something was pressing down on my shoulders as if someone was trying to push me to the ground. My back started to hurt as if something was on top of me, and right after that I felt a breath. It was on my face. It was strong, heavy, and I felt like there was something in front of me very close. I didn't open my eyes. Suddenly, Fernando, another one from the group, screamed with a trembling voice, "Victor, please hurry up." Victor sped up his prayer, and when he finished, he told us, "As soon as I give the order, open your eyes and run. Don't look at anything. Keep your eyes on the ground and run. No, don't pick up anything. 1, 2, now." We all obeyed without question. We ran out. We went down the stairs as fast as we could, but when we got to the room where the electric organ was, it was completely dark. We couldn't see anything at all. Nothing. Not even our own hands. We searched for the light switch, but couldn't find it. Someone suggested we form a single file line, hold on to each other's shirts to guide ourselves and not let go. We moved forward blindly, feeling our way to the entrance hall. When we got to the exit door, Fernando tried to open it, but he couldn't. "It's locked!" "Victor has the key?" And that's when someone asked where Victor was, and someone else replied that he had stayed upstairs. We stayed quiet. Nobody said anything. We heard a note from the organ, just one. It was a dry sound like wood, but it played. We panicked and yelled at Victor to hurry. Seconds later, he ran down with his phone's flashlight on. He opened the door, and we ran to the nearby square. We stayed there lying down, literally lying down, shaking. Some were crying, asking themselves, what happened? Others, like me, didn't say a single word. No one knew what to say. Victor tried to calm us down, but there was no way to explain what had just happened. The next day we returned for our things. We went up in fear, as if expecting to find something or someone. But what was there was just as strange, even though it was alone. Everything was a mess. Folders torn apart, pieces, paper scattered on the floor, backpacks open, notebooks with pages ripped out. It looked like someone had been there all night, rummaging through our things. Victor just looked at us and said that whenever someone with a good heart tries to do the right thing, they run the risk of evil trying to sneak in. I never went to another meeting in that room again. I couldn't. And unlike many of the stories that are told here, where people repeatedly revisit a paranormal event, until today, no one else from the group has talked about this again. About what happened to us, it's as if we want to pretend it never happened. Thank you for staying with us until now, until this point where only the brave make it. Remember that if you have a story you want to share with us, you can send it to our email, miralattodelanoche@gmail.com, or through Instagram, if it's a really, really short story. We're always paying attention to your messages, although sometimes we take a while to respond on Instagram because we get so many messages that sometimes we only get notifications after we've read all the pending ones. But we'll get there eventually, late but surely. In the meantime, I invite you to read Terror, and as always, I'll leave the link in the description. And now, let's turn off the lights again and continue with the next tale of the night. Hello, Uriel and Tales of the Night community. My name is Saul Michel Urgain, and I appreciate you giving me this space. I've been a follower of the show for years, and I never thought that one day I would be here telling our stories, those of my family. The Urgain family, we've experienced strange things for generations. Some stories have been passed down by word of mouth among us, like in all families, and others we experienced ourselves. And even though sometimes it's hard for us to talk about them, we can't deny them. Because fear stays and is inherited. Today I want to tell you about 3 of those experiences. They're just the beginning, but they all happened in the same house, my grandparents' house, and the first one happened when I was just a child. I was about 3 years old and just learning to speak properly when it happened. Maybe that's why it's one of my earliest memories, and I still remember much of what I'm about to tell you clearly. I recall the others from what my family told me. That house was huge and always filled with people, noise, and birds, but also something else, something that felt very clear. We had a store in the front and an altar in the garage. Entering the house, the living room was left, stairs right, and a recliner on the way up. The kitchen, dining room, bedrooms, and a long hallway led to the backyard filled with cages of little birds. During the day, everything seemed normal, but at night that hallway had something that made even adults walk quickly. One of those nights I was alone on the second floor watching cartoons. That's when they say I suddenly started screaming. "It's my turn, give it to me." My middle school cousin came upstairs to check on things. She says she found me crying, angry, arguing with someone she couldn't see. I told her the boy hid the television remote under the bed and wouldn't give it to me. My cousin, very scared, checked, but there was no one there. She just turned off the television and we went downstairs. However, that wasn't the only time I mentioned this boy. It wasn't the only time I saw him. Another night, I was sitting on the stairs watching television with my grandfather. He got up to take care of the store and left me alone. And I remember this very well. When he left, I felt a hand on my back, a small, light, and cold one. Very cold, that feeling, the hand. Small on my back, I still remember it clearly. I turned around really scared, but there was no one there. Before I could call out to my grandfather, a ball started rolling down from upstairs all by itself. A ball my grandfather bought me that same day. It came down step by step until it reached my feet, as if someone had thrown it to me to play. Eventually, we realized it wasn't just my imagination. My grandmother said she sometimes saw him, very clearly and well defined. That there was a boy wearing jeans and a plaid shirt. That this boy had been living there for many, many years. And what I just told you, of course, was just the beginning of what we experienced with him. Over time, we understood that this boy never left. Even though we stopped seeing him for years, he never left. He would come back. We would catch a glimpse of him. We would hear him running down the hallway. He lived there. And even though at first he only seemed to want to play, that presence started to feel clearer and clearer. Until one afternoon, without warning, fear became close, too close. I was in elementary school. My cousin and I were huge fans of WWE. One afternoon, as usual, we went to the room to watch wrestling. There were 2 beds there, a single bed and a bunk bed. Everything seemed normal when we walked in, but that changed after we plugged in the extension cord for the television. It short-circuited when we made contact, and at that moment, the black and blue tiger print blanket on the bed started to catch fire, but in seconds. The power went out in the whole house. My cousin ran out, and I ran after him. My uncles brought up water from the yard in buckets, and I was just watching everything from the stairs, in shock. Smoke quickly filled the second floor. I can't even explain how quickly the second floor filled completely with smoke, so we couldn't see anymore. When they finally managed to put out the fire, they started shouting, "The children! Where are the children? Where are they?" My cousin shouted from the stairs, "I've got one here." He took me by the hand and we hurried down. My Aunt Susanna shouted from upstairs that she saw one in the smoke and said they were there. He followed him down the hallway looking scared, slipping away until he finally grabbed his hand and pulled him along blindly. "Come down, Susanna, they're both here," my grandfather shouted from downstairs. My aunt stopped and let go of the hand of the child she had grabbed without seeing. Through the smoke, she couldn't see anyone anymore. Through the smoke, she realized there was no one else there. The poor woman ran downstairs, I remember, and she couldn't go back up alone that night. She wasn't the only one who saw a third child running through the smoke, but no one could explain who else was there. And that night, I think more because of the scare from the child than the fire, no one could sleep. Fear had already settled in the house. Even though the days went by, no one felt the same anymore. We couldn't go upstairs alone. Nobody liked being in silence. The atmosphere was very strange. I'd say it felt like something opened. This happened when I was in 6th grade, which is why I remember it better than the earlier stories. That night, my mom was at my grandparents' with my uncles, playing cards and drinking beer. We left late. I remember clearly that when we stepped out onto the street, something felt strange. I felt like we shouldn't be leaving. Nothing had happened yet, but something felt wrong. My mom drove while I sat in the passenger seat and my brother slept in the back. The rain was steady and heavy. Heavy rain caused a city river to overflow. At the crossing, we couldn't get through because the road was already covered by water. We had to go back to my grandparents' house. It was like we had to spend the night there. At my uncle's house, they went upstairs to keep playing in a room. They put mattresses together in the living room so my brother, cousins, and I could lie down. Since it was the only place we all fit, they left us in the living room and turned off the light. I was asleep when it began. My uncles and my cousin Chelly heard someone crying in the living room from upstairs. They thought it was one of us. Chelly got up, went downstairs, and noticed something on the mattress. She saw a child sitting on it, completely covered by a blanket. Only the silhouette could be seen, but the blanket was so thin that it was completely clear. That it was a small child underneath it. The silhouette turned toward her. "Mom?" The silhouette lay down, but when my cousin lifted the blanket, she realized that there was no one underneath, that there was no one there. She went upstairs very scared. After that, all the adults brought down more mattresses, and everyone settled in the living room to sleep together with the light on. Even though they told my cousin she must have imagined it, everyone was uneasy. When the rain eased in the early morning, street dogs began barking. First far away, then getting closer and closer to us, as if something was coming nearer. Then came the scream, first soft, as if carried by the wind, then louder, clearer. That I did hear right then. That woke me up. A scream seemed close, but as it faded, you could distinguish it. Words lost in the wind. Maybe it was just crying, or maybe if it was saying something. Especially when it was close, the crying was so deep that it got into your chest. You could feel it in your bones. It wasn't from this world. I pretended to be asleep. I didn't dare move until someone whispered, "It's La Llorona." My blood ran cold. I've always been terrified of her. One of my uncles said that on that night the gates of hell were open, that on that night spirits walked among us. I'm not sure if that's true, but it was one of the longest nights of my life. The next day we acted like we hadn't heard, but the fear remained. I still remember it, as if it had just happened yesterday. The Olgin family are not the only ones with stories like these. This community is not the only one with stories like these. But what makes them different is the way we remember them, in how we who enjoyed them remember them. Those of us who try not to let them be forgotten no matter how much fear they cause us. We remember them with details, with respect, with fear, and with affection, because fear can also be inherited along with our last names. Thank you for listening to these family stories tonight. Thanks, Saul, for letting us share this with them. Special greetings to all families listening. And I want to ask you, please, if you have the privilege to do so, take a moment to look around, to feel who you're with, to appreciate it. Every moment with your families is a moment that won't come back. Each one is a treasure. We'll talk again very soon in more night stories.